Tahmina John, welcome to NexusTalk.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be here.
So I'm really excited to talk to you because I found you through Instagram and TikTok. Through your relatable content. And I'm so excited to talk about your journey of how you started journalism and the content creation. But before that, can you tell us more or introduce yourself to those who have just joined us?
Of course. Well, hi, I'm Tahmina Aziz. And I come from a journalism background and I've been doing content creation for the last 6+ years now.
Wow.
Yeah, and I've really pivoted in terms of the kind of content I've been making. But the ones that you're probably more familiar with right now is more of the personal stuff, a lot of the implementation of Afghan culture and being in the diaspora. And just doing like lighthearted, relatable content through the lens of like a Afghan-Canadian immigrant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you have, you said you have a lot of experience in this work. And also it has, you see the fruits of it. You have 200K followers on Instagram and you've made millions of impressions worldwide. Can you tell us, when did this whole journey start?
Yeah, I mean, I really never envisioned it to turn out the way it did right now. But for me, it started off like showcasing the behind the scenes of my job as a journalist, like a TV reporter, and just kind of showcasing that it's not always doom and gloom, which is a lot of the stories that I have to do is telling some really hard news. And I'm like, okay, let me showcase some of the fun stuff that goes on with my job. And funny enough, I think I've inspired a few folks to enter the industry too, so that was really cool. And then over time, I sort of just kind of pivoted and included my personality a bit more. Eventually, I left my job as a TV reporter, so I'm like, okay, I really do enjoy making content and social media, so I felt like the audience was really, there was an appetite for incorporating more of my culture, more of my personality, and I really found a niche within the lens of comedy, which I never really envisioned, but it's unpredictable, so here we are.
You never really envisioned. I feel like your personality is you're funny.
Oh, thanks.
And it shines through your content.
I try. I mean, it's growing up, it's not like someone was like, oh my gosh, Tahmina, you're funny. It just sort of always, I guess, had that knack, but like, even to this day, it's like my best friends from high school be like, oh, Tahmina, you're actually kind of funny. I'm like, you just discovered this right now? I thought we've been doing this. Yeah, I mean, I come from a theater background and I do love comedy writing, so it did kind of feel like a natural fit. I just think maybe it was part of the reason might be I wasn't necessarily encouraged to kind of tap into the skill that I naturally had. So it isn't until I'd say in the last couple of years where I think I can really hone in on this and make a career out of it. Whereas asked me this 5 years ago, I wouldn't have been where I am right now. I wouldn't have known, at least.
So now we're talking about where you are at right now, but take us back to when you started to choose journalism as a career. Tell us about the high school Tahmina. What was she like growing up?
High school Tahmina, or Tahmina, which is the right way of saying my name, yes.
That's like I
emphasize my...
Yeah.
No, it's good. I should welcome that. High school me was really into theater. I was a theater kid. That's my background. And then even in high school or in university, that's what I studied as well, is psychology and theater. So I come from a performance background and I've been acting since then too, I think since the age of 16, like going to commercials and all of that. So that's really fun, yeah. But then coming from an Afghan family, I mean, that's not really something that was encouraged. So you really didn't see much representation on TV for people, and then even the types of roles that were out there, it's just not something that my family really wanted me to do. So I'm like, okay, what can I do in terms of incorporating my love for storytelling and, bridging the gap between marginalized voices? And that's sort of how I got into storytelling, or journalism specifically. And that's really the kinds of stories in which I really wanted to focus on, is bridging that gap between folks that you don't normally hear in mainstream media. And so that was at least my mission as I was working in journalism.
Did you feel like, how long were you in doing journalism overall before you switched to content creation?
I would say about 7+ years.
Wow.
Yeah, so I did my internship and then I got right into it at CBC. And I mean, I studied like shortly after university, but yeah, it would be, I guess, like 7 years. I was a TV reporter and anchoring and all that for about 5 years.
Mm-hmm. And was there ever a moment in the newsroom where you felt like your Afghan identity was a burden before it became a strength?
It's funny you ask, because I feel like, if anything, it was more of my my competitive advantage, because I felt like when I got hired into the industry and getting to work in the field, there was this drive for Canadian media to really want to focus and showcase different points of views and different voices. So seeing someone like myself coming in, there's very few Afghan journalists out there, and especially here in Canada, because it's a hard industry to tap into when you have like zero networks or any connections. So yeah, I think if anything, they encourage that, they love that, but it was a lot of having to fight for certain stories and sort of proving why certain stories mattered. So there was that tug and pull a little bit, but I think they appreciated the different angles I could bring. Mm-hmm.
You mean when you were there, you pushed for stories that from minorities, like Afghans?
Yes, there was a lot of enterprise journalism on my part, because I felt like people can really just get a little lazy with the reporting after. They just kind of pull the same contacts that they had from a year ago and tell the certain stories a certain way and follow the same formula, and you're like, okay, I'm just gonna put this 1.5-minute piece onto the screen or on TV and call it a day. But I felt like, especially with the Taliban takeover, I really had to tell my news director at the time why it was important for us to really just focus on telling the stories through the voices of Afghans. Yeah. And I try to stretch that out as much as possible, whereas he at one point suggested 3 times, and I had to like tell him like, hey, this is not the time to talk to veterans, because that was his suggestion. And I'm like, I understand and I appreciate where you're coming from, but no, this is the time where Afghans are mourning and grieving, and we need to really have them share their stories and their perspectives on what's going on. So I made it a mission to make sure that we weren't getting any outside voices unless it was absolutely necessary, or like they really studied it, something like that. So yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up, because one thing that I noticed when I moved to Canada was the fact that I was getting these speaking invitations, right? And I would talk at these spaces. And in addition to people being surprised at an Afghan being the way I am, I realized that most of the stories aren't being told from our perspective, because there is that sense of community and unity or representation that could be. But how do you think, the fall of Afghanistan was the way it was told internationally from your eyes as a journalist?
That's such a great question. And internationally, I could just, in my perspective as like a Canadian reporter, I can tell you how it was, but I felt like there's always been the news cycle is constant, right? So I think it was almost kind of expected as to what was going to go down after all the troops left. So I felt like there was this push for what's the next big story, what's the next big international headline. So I felt like there was this push to kind of just like move on and go ahead and talk about the next thing. And so, at least from my perspective as a local reporter, as much as I can do on my own small ecosystem is push it for as long as I can to bring the voices that mattered. But I do remember that like the online discourse could be, like I said, a little disrespectful, especially when you saw pictures of people clinging onto planes because they were so desperate to leave the country and not be living under the rule of the Taliban. But then there were people who were making memes out of this, and that was really, really disheartening. So it's really weird. We live in a weird world right now where international story, like people can get so unserious right now, and
I think
it's terrible.
That's the maybe, I don't know, problem with social media because people are so untouched or out of touch with, you know, the realities of other people's lives. And that's why, you know, I think that these conversations are important, because being an Afghan looks like being Tahmina, being Nila, and being the other guests that we have on. It's not just the headlines that the news is pushing for. And what I love about your story is that you push for not only just like showing, representing what the news really tries to tell as Afghan stories. So yeah, thank you for living your truth, because I think that really contributes to other people's perception of what an Afghan identity is like.
Yeah.
But I guess my next question is, how do you deal with the duality of being a Canadian and being an Afghan?
That's so fun, hey? I think that's basically my entire niche, is just showcasing being an Afghan daughter at home and then dealing with, I don't know, the dualities of the Western life and the clashing of both cultures. I find it kind of funny sometimes, because it's just those everyday nuanced experiences that you deal with, say even like the tug of war of like Tara, for example, of trying to pay for someone's coffee. That's based off of lived experiences. And then I'm like, you know what, maybe there's gonna be folks online who are gonna enjoy this or relate to this. So creating like little skits like that.
Do you still Taruf, by the way?
Sometimes, yes, it depends on the friend.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, that's what I do.
think like it's been bad, because I'll just pay for someone's full dinner and I'm like, I can't. It's so against my nature to just split the bill or something.
I know, as an Afghan, it feels really awkward.
Yes.
Yeah, to split the bill.
But the only ones who get it are either Afghans themselves or people from the vicinity of the country. So people with similar cultures. And so I love that though, because then it's like if you know that friend won't do it and you're like, oh, I just hate this. And it's like, okay, no, I'll pay for mine, you pay for yours. And it feels cold. I don't know.
It does.
Yeah.
What else? What else?
In terms of the dualities of, being an Afghan and a Canadian, I mean, I think I've come to the point now where, if anything, I look at the Afghan culture and the Western culture through this lens of, okay, I'm not necessarily saying one is better than the other. I think growing up in high school and when I was much younger, there was a lot of shame around being raised as an Afghan and just wanting to shy away from my identity. Whereas now in my adulthood, I can embrace it. I feel very proud to be Afghan, which I'm very proud to be where I am right now to be able to do that. Unfortunately, I feel like there's a lot of us in the diaspora who've, you know, moved here from Afghanistan from like years ago, and they can probably relate to that. And that's when I neglected, you know, speaking the language, for example. So now it's, okay, how can I relearn and rediscover these parts of my culture that I've neglected? And so it's been a bit of a whirlwind of a transition to get here. But it was definitely just more of a personal journey. And I know there's still folks out there who probably are still going through that shame. And so hopefully through my content, they can feel like you're not alone in this process. And hopefully one day you'll want to rediscover the beauty of Afghan culture.
Yeah, and I think that's what your content does to everyone, because it's so personal and serious, and it's so like raw and honest that everybody, like every Afghan at least, can see themselves in it. But I guess, what do you think was like the pivotal moment for you where you were like, okay, now I'm mature enough to know that being an Afghan is not shameful? Like, how do you think you got to that mindset? You said it's a journey, but is there anything that helped?
I can't think of like a specific moment in which something just clicked in my head and thought, okay, yeah, you're a proud Afghan now. You know, I think it came in increments. I think I will say maybe it was around 2019. This was just like as I was entering my journalism career as well. I felt like there was this yearning inside me that felt that I wanted to reconnect with my community and meet with other folks in the diaspora, because I can't be the only one who feels, you know, this sort of shame or like I can't be the, it's gonna sound so bad. It's like, I used to think like, it was this this idea of being, like, I don't know if there's a theory around the name of this.
I have a guess, but if I say it, maybe that's something else, and then you're gonna out me for saying it.
It's just like this idea that I'm the exception to the rule, and that the Afghan community is beneath me, and I'm, you know, this intelligent, well-spoken young woman, and the rest of the community I just don't agree with. Like, they're not the same.
I see what you mean.
There was this superiority complex, if you will.
Yes, that's
yeah. And it's terrible.
Back. Sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, that's okay.
But I just had an immediate thought. That goes back to how Afghanistan is represented throughout the world, because the problems kind of like overtake the fact that we are people, and there's like dimensions and facets to being human, right? And the news and the media has changed the perception of being an Afghan so much that us as Afghans are like, maybe they're all like that and I'm better than them.
Yeah.
I don't know, how did you get out of that complex?
I think after meeting more people and seeing as how there were so many brilliant Afghans and Afghan-Canadians, realizing that the way that I had this weird perception of my own community was just so skewed and probably heavily influenced by mainstream media. I mean, yes, growing up and seeing the way that our community was being portrayed on TV and whatnot. I mean, I made a whole YouTube video about this too, about like Muslim portrayals in Hollywood, and just how much that can impact the way one perceives, you know, themselves too. Yeah. So I just think there's like a lack of representation in the writer's room to showcase, you know, nuanced experiences. I think that's what really was something that was lacking a lot growing up. And I guess we're sort of experiencing now this moment of a lot of trailblazers, you know, trying to incorporate these new experiences, these stories that none of us really got to experience growing up and watching. So in terms of the pivot, I don't know how to explain it. I just, yeah, I guess it's like it's a moment of being like outgrowing that kind of mindset. But it was a deep yearning. I think that's the big feeling for me, is realizing I was neglecting my culture and my people for too long.
I feel like maybe I'm just throwing it out there, but that yearning happens around like when you like go to university and you're like, okay, who am I? And then you question everything. You're like, identity crisis, but not in terms of like culture identity crisis, in terms of like the young adulthood era. Sorry, I'm putting words into your mouth. I hope you agree.
No, I get it. I mean, it is sort of that whole identity complex, right? You're sort of just, going through this, who am I? Because growing up, you think this is who you are. This is who you are. You know, you're trained to think this way. And then suddenly your brain is starting to develop, your prefrontal cortex is kicking in.
That too.
And then you're starting just to question, like, wait, you're questioning your upbringing, and it's like who you are. And even to this day, I'm still questioning that, but I mean, it's a lifelong journey, so you'll still get it, but it's about unlearning the toxic ways of how you view your community and the communities around you. I think even the arbitrary, like, racial hierarchies, if that's something that you've ever witnessed too, like that was something I had to definitely unlearn, because it was something that I was internalizing growing up, thinking the more white I was, the better I'd be liked, the better I'd be accepted into the West. And anyone who's darker than me, who look a certain way, who are behaving a certain way, you know, they're less desirable. So
that's what that is.
Yeah.
I think that comes with being pressured into thinking that way, because it's like your survival instincts are kind of like, okay, how can I survive in this mostly Caucasian, you know, space? And you're like, okay, I gotta blend in. But then you're like, there's a phase and you're like, I can stand out. Especially when it comes to like job applications and everything, and you're like, no, this is time to stand out. I don't want to blend in. But going back to your experience in journalism and Canadian media, CBC, CTV, and there's more, how does the way they tell Afghan stories differ from how you tell them on your YouTube channel?
Yeah, super different. I mean, the TV stories that I was doing with all those news outlets. They were very heavy, generally very hard news, and they were told through, being filtered through multiple producers. And so you showcase these stories on TV, and there's a certain formula to it. You have A person, B person, and hopefully a C person to bring in different perspectives on a story that's going on. Whereas the stories that I tell online nowadays, it's a lot more personality driven, it's a lot more personal. So the TV stories that I was doing, I was removing myself as much as possible and being as objective as I could. But with social media, I get to have a lot more fun with it, even in terms of the way I film things. It's very much Tahmina's content, and so not Tahmina the reporter.
Because you can live your authentic self.
Exactly.
And that doesn't feel like work.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, now it just feels like I'm having fun and thinking of how can I bring a smile to someone's face? That's usually a way that I try to motivate myself when I think of content. How can I bring joy in such a dark, meek world? Whereas the TV news is just very, very...
The opposite.
Very much the opposite, yes.
Very factual, very serious.
Exactly. Except for the occasional times where I do stories around Nowruz, but even then I'd have to incorporate something negative to it about something going on in the world. Sometimes I just want to focus on the happiness, the joy, the beauty of our culture.
Yeah.
I think that's what's missing a lot.
That's true. And I can tell that is really easy for you because you're a very positive person.
I try to be.
You're a theater kid, come on.
Theater.
It comes with it.
Yeah.
But was that a good enough of a reason for you? Was that all? A good enough of a reason for you to switch from journalism to content creation? Because you said you were in journalism for 7 years and then content creation for how long?
Around the same time, actually. Yeah, I'd say around 2020 is when I started with the boom of TikTok and everything.
Oh, perfect timing then.
Yeah.
Okay.
During the pandemic and everything.
Yeah.
But that's when I started off my career in journalism. So both of them kind of started at the same time. I think content creation maybe a year or two after.
Okay.
But in terms of the pivot, there was multiple reasons as to why I left. But it was just that there's a lot of downsizing going on in Canadian media. I mean, there's not enough funding going on. So I was sort of promised that as I am, growing into my career and going into the bigger cities, I'd have a team to work with as opposed to the one-woman show that I was. I would shoot my own stuff, chase, edit, everything, all solo. And so you'd have to be really self-sufficient. My title officially was multimedia journalist. So you're wearing a lot of different hats. And it gets to you. You get burnt out so easily because there's only so much you can do on your own with the daily deadlines. And so heading to the big city in Vancouver, I'm back to being solo again for the most part. And then even in Toronto, it would be the same thing. And I said, okay, I can't keep doing this. This is too much. Yeah. And then even when the ways that they were telling certain stories, I didn't quite agree with. And I was it's time. I need to really trust my instinct here and see what feels right. I feel like this is no longer my calling. Yeah, and I was having a lot more fun with my content creation, and I'm let me just explore this a bit more and see how it's like.
And before the interview, we were talking, and you said that content creation isn't the only thing that you're busy with. Tell us about the other stuff going on.
So I actually ended up getting hired at CBC at the podcast department, where I get to incorporate both my journalism background and content creation. So I've been able to expand their social reach and everything, and apply all the skills and experience that I've had, which I could have not predicted that this was going to be my life. But this is the world we live in. Businesses thrive on social media growth and reach and exposure. So little did I know that my fun little hobby was going to end up being a really cool job. So that's what I'm doing now.
To change the vibe a little bit, can you tell us about the process of content creation? What does it look like for those maybe that are interested?
Yeah, of course. I think I've been able to incorporate more of my family lately. I know a few folks really like seeing my parents on social media, but it might be a surprise to folks that there's actually a lot of coaching that goes on behind the scenes. Like my mom's kind of shy.
I really can't tell when I watch the videos.
Yeah, no, I have to like coach her a little bit behind the scenes. Even then, she's constantly questioning, like, oh my gosh, like, how are people going to perceive me, you know? And kudos to her though, you know, like she was raised in a whole different generation, and for me to be like, hey, like, let's just, you know,
make a fun TikTok.
Make a fun little TikTok,
Yeah.
and people are gonna love you. Like you don't have to worry about it. I never want to make her, anyone who I incorporate, look silly or uncomfortable. Like that's never the thing. But yeah, I think lighthearted, relatable stuff, people who can kind of feel like they're seeing themselves through the content, like that's what I really enjoy. But the process prior to even shooting, it's a lot of writing, it's a lot of brainstorming and sitting down and thinking, like, kind of being strategic with how you want to relate to as many people as you can, with the twist that I am kind of really focusing on the Afghan community because that is my lived experience.
Yeah.
But I love being able to relate to people from all walks of life.
I have 2 follow-ups.
Okay.
Has there ever been a time where you've been like, okay, I've made this video, it looks great, but I'm kind of doubtful, and you've like put in the effort, but you didn't post it?
There might have been times where I've put it together. I don't know.
Does that happen often? I feel like it might not.
It doesn't happen too often, because if I'm going to put in the time and effort to create something, I want to make sure that I thought it thoroughly to make sure that this is a video that I really want to post. But generally, I'm happy with anything I usually do make. I think if there have been times where I feel like I'm forced to post something for the sake of the algorithm, like maybe it's content I'm not necessarily proud of, or it doesn't really speak to the kind of quality in which I usually make. There have been times like that, but as a woman, there's times where you film yourself and you're like, shoot, like, I don't think I look my best in this video, even though it has nothing to do with the story or anything like that. You're like, oh my gosh, maybe my like chin's showing out, a little double chin thing going on. It's like, people are gonna pick that out, but you sort of just have to build like a thick skin around that and anticipate that. But generally, folks have been pretty nice online, generally.
There's always hate comments.
There's always going to be negative comments. Yes, so there have been times, not usually, but if you truly believe in the story or the idea behind it, then you just kind of go for it. And you can never really predict. That's the other thing, is that anything that's sitting in your drafts because you're too scared to be perceived in whatever way you think that video is going to make you be like looked online, don't let that stop you. It's only going to hinder your growth. So I sort of just like look away and post and like not think about it. And if it doesn't do well, like that's fine.
Yeah, it's part of the journey. Especially with algorithms, you never know what's
You just can't predict it.
Yeah. How do you deal with the hate comments?
I mean, you're doing something right if you're getting some hate. You're never going to please everyone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. And speaking of like content creation overall, I think you touched on this a little bit. The importance of taking breaks. What does your time off look like?
Ooh.
Like a perfect day off.
A perfect day off. I'm never not on my phone, so that is something I'm gonna work on.
That's part of the job.
Yeah, that is part of the job. I'm always kind of like scrolling occasionally here and there, just trying to keep up with the times. But I think this also kind of goes back into the whole hate comment thing, is metaphorically touching grass, realizing like, you know, life is just not on your screen, you know, it's out in the real world. So spending time with family and friends and making sure you have like a really good support system, and yeah, just knowing that you're loved unconditionally outside of this role of yours.
Yeah, and work.
So at work and everything, exactly. So my time off is usually like a nice good cup of iced coffee, a nice little walk, and spending time with my parents. And yeah, I'm a big family girl, so stuff like that.
Tell us a bit more about your family and their background. When did they move to?
Yeah.
Because you were born here, right?
I wasn't, but my family, like, we moved here many years ago. I came here when I was 2. So I was basically raised as a Canadian.
Yeah. And how about your family? What did their journey out of Afghanistan look like?
It was chaotic. I mean, during that time, it was during the Civil War, and my mom noticed when she went to Kabul that all her classmates had started to leave the country, and then she realized there was like a slow brain drain going on, you know, the ones that are educated and being targeted by the Mujahideen at the time. She was like, okay, we might be next. So she packed up her stuff and got my dad, and like our family and everyone, and took us, and had to say goodbye to Afghanistan. And she left in the early 90s and moved there to Tajikistan, where the Civil War broke out there shortly after too, and then in Russia. And yeah, it was a bit of a journey. It took many years, and then we came to Canada in the late 90s.
It's always every guest we've had on our show, or friends I talk to, everyone's journey out of Afghanistan is like a book in of itself. I feel like if we could have the opportunity, all of us Afghans would be writers and novelists, would have like 1,000 memoirs.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, by the way, have you ever thought of becoming a writer, as you're a storyteller?
Yeah, like writing for a book?
Like a memoir?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to. One day, inshallah. Why not?
Yeah, we both. Yeah, I've thought about it too.
I really like screenwriting. I think that's like a real passion of mine right now, which is kind of expanding on the skits and everything that I make online on social media, because there's a way you sort of make the content, and I have like a rhythm to it now, whereas now it's, I question, what's next? I want to be able to expand on my ability to write, coming from a theater background too. So it'd be nice to, write some short films, stories, TV shows, and expand.
Have you ever done anything that's like one level below that you would be able to manage before getting hired as a screenwriter, say? Like
independent filmmaking and stuff? I think that would probably be the next step in order to have like a proof of concept for some of your story ideas, and then kind of pitching it to execs and seeing where things go. I think there's definitely right now an appetite for more authentic storytelling for film and TV as well. People want to see proper representation, not someone painting their face to look a certain way, So it's nice to see, like I said before, having a nuanced experience, a nuanced representation of our people. And the way that even I showcase my lived experience is not going to be 100% accurate for another young woman who was raised here in Toronto, being an Afghan-Canadian. And I think that's why it's really important to see more of us getting into this industry, because I want to be able to, I feel like there's room for all of us to succeed. It's not just like this, only one person's able to kind of take up space, we can all sit at the table.
And when I think about it, like when you were describing it, I was just imagining you as a screenwriter making your own film debut, and I'm just so excited. I hope it happens one day.
Inshallah, yes, I'd love that. And then who knows, I would like to write a book too one day, who knows? Yeah, it's just sort of like, I couldn't predict how my life looked like today, even from 5 years ago. So you never know what might happen in 5 years from now.
True. And we've talked about this, humor is a big thing in your content. Do you see that as a tool or a shield? Because the topics that you talk about, like we said, personal, they're about identity, maybe sometimes it's about your parents having fun, but some other times it's heavy.
Definitely a tool. Yeah, I think a lot of my comedy is, I want people to think. I don't want this to be like something superficial that they just sort of scroll and move on. I want them to go, haha, that's funny. Oh, wait, I do that too. Maybe I should actually rethink the way I act or behave or think a certain way. I want people to kind of realize, always improve yourself. And even if we are kind of showcasing the clashes of our culture and everything, just getting people to think a bit you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's definitely a tool. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a shield at all. I think the best ways to communicate to the public and to give exposure to under-discussed topics is by entertainment. And if it's gonna make it through the ha-has, like that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna incorporate like the humor, right? Yeah, the comedy.
And I guess this question is going to be a full circle moment, because you've talked about journalism, content creation, the positives and negatives. Let's talk about the young generation of Afghans, especially those in diaspora who have access to a lot of resources. They can dream of something and work hard for it and actually get there. What do you think is the new Afghan narrative that we should be building for the next generation in the whole context of, you know, dreams and capabilities, with the consideration that we have unlimited resources?
It's hard to predict what this next generation or a wave of immigrants are going to turn out to be, because maybe they might have to go through the same steps as we had, you know, which is sort of hating where you're coming from and then sort of rediscovering it later. If they feel like it's a survival technique for them to kind of just remove themselves or embrace it, depending on what they need to do. It's really hard to say. I can't speak for them and be like, hey, like this is what is gonna happen. But what I can say is they're in a better position now, in my opinion, to know that there's a larger community. And there's been a whole generation of us who've lived here for a few decades now, who have gone through what you're going through, obviously in different contexts, but hopefully they'll find home. I think that's the biggest journey for us all, is finding yourself and being at peace with where you are. And I think that's like a journey that we can all relate on.
That's true. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
Of
Do
course.
you have any parting words of wisdom?
I can't think of anything right now. I mean, it's been a pleasure speaking with you, and I really enjoyed this chat.
Thank you so much. I hope that the honesty and, you know, the vulnerability that you brought, the authenticity that we've been talking about, really resonates with our Afghans out there.
Me too.
See themselves through.
I hope so.
Yeah. Until next episode of Nexus Talk, stay informed, stay inspired.